Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming. Today we are doing a patch 14.8 rundown. This is the new TFT patch that is going to be dropping in 2 days or on April 17th. I'm Upsetmax, this is another class by Fit Gaming Training Grounds, and let's get straight into it. For those watching in the voice channel live, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute your mic and ask, but any big questions, feel free to leave to the end. So today, as I mentioned, we are going to be doing a rundown on the new patch 14.8. It's a completely new patch. There's a lot of changes and a couple of topics we'll be talking about today. First off, we'll start off with the system changes. So there are new changes to player damage, streaking, and shop odds. So we'll talk about what they are, how that will affect our upcoming gameplay. Then we'll move on to traits and units, talk about any buffs and nerfs, and then end off with items and augments and talk about those changes as well. The point of this guide is to help you get an understanding, or at least a better understanding of the new patch, and help you figure out what comps are good, what comps to not play anymore, and just the overall macro about the new patch. At the very end, we'll do a recap / summary, and then we'll enter the Q&A session for those who are in the Discord server. Alright, so let's get straight into it. The system changes. First off, let's start off with the player damage. So, the player damage has been altered a bit. The stage base damage has now been increased by 2. And if you're playing double up, then there are different numbers, but I'm just going to be focusing on non-double up. And what has been changed is now player damage is going to be increased by 1. So 1 extra player damage for every surviving unit. So although you might be already doing the math in your head, basically I've summed it up here on the left. If you lose by only 1 unit, now you'll take more damage. So now, previously in the past, if you lose by 1 unit, you're like, oh, perfect loss, I'm only taking a bit of damage. Now, if you lose by 1 unit, you will take more damage relative to like the current patch or how it's currently done. On the new patch, if you lose by 2 units, then it is the same as losing 2 units on this current patch. And on the new patch, if you lose by either 3 or more units, you'll actually take less damage because now the way the damage is calculated, instead of 2 and going to 1, etc., now it is just 1 extra damage for every surviving unit. So what does this all mean? It means now good losses are no longer as good. So just losing by 1 unit is no longer the best. You're actually going to be taking more damage than you would have before. And what does this mean? It means that getting a really bad loss, so losing by 3 or more units, you'll actually take less damage. So this really benefits lose streaking. This really benefits fortune. So this is an upcoming change that's where those 2 types of playstyles are going to benefit the most from this. So that is how player damage is calculated. Upcoming streaks now. 2 streaking is back. So Mort Dog has heard our prayers. Now it used to be just be a streak of 3 will grant gold. Now if you win or lose and have a streak of 2, you'll now grant 1 gold. So that is very exciting. 2 streaking is back. We love to see it. And the very last one, shop odds. So now from on level 7, the shop odds have changed a bit. It used to be from 1930 to 40. Now it's 20, 33, and 36. So what does this mean? It means that on level 7, it's going to be a bit harder to hit your tier 3 or 3 cost units because we went from 40 to 36. However, the 2 cost units now have a higher chance of appearing per shop slot, at least by 3%. So this means that 2 cost reroll, specifically I'm thinking of like Janna or even like Lux Amumu, is a lot more acceptable on level 7 now. You don't always have to be staying level 6 unless you're rerolling for like 2 cost units. It's a lot easier to hit 2 cost units now on level 7, but a bit harder to hit 3 cost reroll or 3 cost units on level 7. So that is how I approach the shop odds. Also, this means that level 7 comps, where you're just rerolling 3 cost units, will be harder to hit just in general. So comps, especially like duelists, so like Tristana and Volibear, or just Yone even on level 7. So it is a nerf to those comps, and I would say more of like a rounded out for like the 2 to 3 cost reroll comps like Janna Diana. So that is how the shop odds were adjusted. And then the very last one is just like a Morgana encounter. Basically, you had a choice with either like your next 2 costs that you purchase is fully upgraded, or at least upgraded to 2-star, or 10 gold. 10 gold was just insane. So now they've nerfed it down to 7 gold and it's more situational. So these are the system changes. I'd say the player damage is one of the biggest ones, but we also love to see that 2 streaking is back and a little bit of a change of shop odds for level 7. We're going to move on now to the traits. So this is the first page of trait changes. Basically, there's some nerfs, there's some buffs. Dragonlord has been performing extremely well, so now the true damage is going to be lower at the higher breakpoints. I wouldn't say it's like too big of a deal. Basically, once you got in 4 Dragon Lord, which was the breakpoint that you wanted to get, you got that 1.5 second enemy team-wide stun, which was really, really useful late game. So even though the true damage is down a bit, the stun remains. So I think Dragon Lord is still going to be good. Exalted had a bit of a change where the initial base damage has now been increased from 45. So if you don't know exactly what Exalted does, I'm sure we all have an idea. However, this is the specifics. It used to be now base, your team gains 4%, and then you gain either 1% extra per level or 2.5 if you ever played 5 Exalted, which is really rare. Now the base is 5, so not only is Exalted going to be a bit stronger early, because if you're a low level and you just put in 3 Exalted, then you're not getting that much percentage damage per level, but at least you have the base. But now the base is 5, so it's going to be a bit stronger early, and just in general, it's going to be stronger. Also, 5 Exalted got buff from 2.5 to 3% per level, so if you ever have a chance to play 5 Exalted units, then you will be doing a lot more percentage bonus damage in the late game. A couple changes to Faded here. So Set's Omnivamp was way too much. If you were able to have a set and you're playing Faded, most of the time you would be playing 7 Faded, so then it was a 300% bonus. So it used to be 45 Omnivamp for your entire team, which was insane. Your Aphelios or your Syndra casts once and they fully heal back to full HP, same with the set. So now it's been nerfed to 12%, so times 3 is going to be 36% Omnivamp, which is still very good, however just not as broken as it was with 45%. In exchange, they have upped the Syndra damage bonus Faded by a little bit from 10 to 11%. So if you are tethering your Syndra late game, then at least you'll now have like 33% bonus damage, which is pretty good, but this will be pretty situational. So that is a change to Faded. They also slightly nerfed the 5 Fortune from 3 to 2, but we have to remember that player damage was decreased in the previous, and if you're playing Fortune, most of the time you are not having just a 1 unit loss. So this is, I think it's a bit of a buff. Actually, okay, it is a buff, because also sometimes we don't have 5 Fortune, so definitely a buff if you're playing 3 Fortune, and I think maybe it evens out if you're playing 5 Fortune, because when you're playing Fortune, you most of the time are losing by either 3 or more units, because you're sacking your HP, right? So now you'll be taking less player damage with the player damage changes, and if you have 5 Fortune in, then even better, you're already taking less player damage, and at least you're healing too, which is better than nothing. So Fortune is going to be very strong this upcoming patch. They nerfed 7 heavily, so that is going to be the first nerf to the Yone line. On this current patch, if you hit Yone 3 and 7 heavily for Reaper, that whole comp is a menace. So that has been nerfed a little bit. And then the very last one, Story Weaver, the 3 Story Weaver on hit and ability damage has been decreased. So this is the first slide of trait changes. We have a couple other ones. So remember in our previous patch 14.7 or 14.7b, all of the Ink Shadow items except for protection got a buff. Now most of the Ink Shadow items are getting a nerf, or at least an adjustment. So Bombardment's damage goes down, the protection HP shield goes down, the poison damage goes down from 44 to 33, and Toxin was an insane one. Really great on Senna, really great on Kaisa. And then the worst one, Vitality, gets a little bit of an HP buff from 250 to 350. So evens out a little bit, adjusted a little bit. I think Ink Shadow is still going to be good. There are some Kaisa adjustments upcoming as well, and some forecasts. But Ink Shadow is definitely, I think, still definitely playable in some spots. 6 Porcelain nerfed. This needed to be done. This 6 Porcelain trait was very, very strong. So the attack speed has been changed from 125% to 100, and the DR is now from 60 to 50%. So getting 60% damage reduction on all your Porcelain units, which is insane. So that has been nerfed. And then Umbral 6 breakpoint and the 9 breakpoint for Umbral has been buffed. I don't think this changes too much. The Umbral units just are not that good if you're playing vertical Umbral. Like you're playing a Darius, you're playing a Yorick. A Loon gets a little bit of buff, I'll talk about that later. And then Silas does as well, but Yone, none of the Umbral units like playing together vertically synergize very well, or just like work very well, or have any damage. So I'm not sure how much this will affect Umbral in the upcoming patch. Maybe I'm wrong. But I don't think having 2% of a higher execute threshold will change the state of Umbral. So I think that should be all of the changes to the traits. We're now going to move on to the 1 and 2 cost units now. So we have some Story Weaver champions or Story Weaver units who are getting some love. Garen, Riven, and Zyra are all getting buffs. Basically, even though Story Weaver Kale, so the summoned unit in the summons trait gets nerfed, at least the summoned units get a bit of a buff. So a little bit of a compensation. Garen now will have a larger shield scaling off of his AP. Riven gets 5 bonus base AD, and she has more of a heal. And then also Zyra gets some more spell damage, and also her plant attack speed missile is increased. So pretty good. We like to see it for our Story Weaver units. And then Gnar is also getting a buff. So now the way this works is his AP to AD conversion has now changed from every like 2% AP to every 4% AP. Regarding the conversion, and then also the maximum stacks that Gnar is able to acquire from this conversion goes from 50 to 25. So basically what this means, this is a buff to Gnar. You are able to get fully stacked faster, and either from being hit or hitting, so it's kind of like a built-in Titan's Resolve, you're able to just stack a lot faster and be able to output a lot more damage a lot faster into the fight. So Gnar is looking pretty good, and then Senna, although their damage was lowered, their quality of life got a change. So now, if you noticed by playing Senna in your game or playing against Senna, when they casted, if they killed the targets before they were going to cast, they would just cast anyway in the same direction and completely whiff it. Now, hopefully, with Riot's AI, this unit is now able to more reliably hit her target, even if the target dies during the actual cast or before the cast. So I would say, I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure that Senna actually will deal more overall damage now because she's no longer missing her ability. So this is looking pretty good for Senna. And then 2 minor ones, Qiyana gets a little bit more attack speed, and Teemo 3 gets a little bit extra damage. So this is the 1 and 2 cost, nothing too crazy here, just a bit of good changes. We're going to move on to the 3 costs and the 4 costs. So now is when we're starting to see a little bit more of changes and some changes into the meta. So first off, Alune gets a little bit of a buff. This unit is not played on this current patch at all. So it's good to see that she gets a little bit more spell damage. Now we move into the nerfs of the 3 cost melee lines. There's also going to be a Titan's Resolve nerf that I'll talk about in the item section. However, for now, we have our Volibear and our Yone nerf. Volibear is now having 10% extra mana in his mana pool. Even though he starts with 10, now his first cast will still take 50 mana to cast, but then now his mana has been changed from 50 to 60 for his secondary and consecutive casts. So this is basically 1 extra auto before Volibear wants to cast. Pretty substantial. I think it's going to hit Volibear, or at least be noticeable. And then Yone has lower base attack speed, which basically just means lower damage output. So this is the first round of nerfs, and then I'll talk about the Titans after. We're going to move into some buffs now. So all 4 costs have now been buffed. We're kind of entering a 4 and 5 cost meta. Basically, it's kind of like a durability buff has been applied to all 4 costs. So Annie has 200 extra HP, Ashe extra 200 HP, and also her mana has been adjusted, or at least buffed. So now it only takes 6 auto attacks to actually cast, and then she will only need 9 auto attacks for consecutive casts. So these are the first 2 4 cost units to get buffed. Basically, what they wanted to do is they wanted to really make more comparable the defensive stats of a 2-star 4 cost and a 3-star 3 cost. Of course, 3-star 3 cost should still be stronger than a 2-star 4 cost because 3-star 3 cost is easier, or is harder to hit. However, the gap was just too large, so they're trying to shorten that gap now and make 4 costs more tanky. So moving on to our next units, these are all buffs. Kai'Sa, even though they have a little bit less attack speed. Galio gets more HP. Kayn gets more HP as well, so 100 HP, 200 HP. Lilia gets a couple buffs, so not only does she get 200 more HP, now her damage is increased for her orbs, for both orbs, so that's good to see. Kai'Sa gets 200 HP, and her attack speed is changed from 0.85 to 0.8. I don't think it's that big of a deal because the main output of Kai'Sa's damage is through her ability, because she's an AD caster, not an AD carry, which means her auto attacks don't do that much damage. It's mainly just her cast. And if you're still playing around like a Sivir and like an attack speed Kayle, she'll still be casting like relatively consistently, and her damage was not touched, and even her HP was increased. So I don't think Kai'Sa's gutted by any means. I think that unit is still completely fine. Lee Sin gets an extra 250 HP and 5 base AD. So that's very good. Lee Sin could be a lot tankier and deal some extra damage as well. So definitely a lot of buffs to 4 costs. We're going to be seeing a lot of 4 costs and less reroll in the upcoming patch 14.8. And then very last slide for 4 costs, just more buffs. Morgana also gets more attack speed. She gets 200 extra HP. Ornn gets 200 HP. Same with Syndra and Nautilus. Nautilus even gets a mana buff. So now Lilia and Nautilus has been buffed. Both 4 costs, or both main 4 costs in the Mythic line. And then he will require 20 less mana to cast on consecutive casts, and then even 200 extra HP on Sylas, which is pretty important because Sylas is a bruiser, so he will just be receiving even more HP once bruiser is activated, especially with Galio. So these are all the 4 cost buffs. It's just a durability buff. Almost every 4 cost has received an extra 200 HP, which is very, very good, and even some units have received a mana buff or an attack speed buff. We're going to finish off with some 5 costs now. So 5 costs have also received a durability change. The only main thing to note here, apart from everyone receiving HP, is Irelia. So Irelia, I think, was actually bugged previously on this current patch. You may have noticed like, oh, the Irelia blades, they're going, and then some backline unit is just randomly dead. It used to be a targeting problem, or at least a targeting bug. So now basically what's going to happen is Irelia will have less access to the enemy backline if you're playing her, and then vice versa. If you're playing against an Irelia, one of your backline units won't just randomly die. So damage unchanged is just the way the targeting would work. Now is just less access to the backline. Every other unit has extra HP, and Lissandra even gains an extra 200 HP compared to the others 50 or 100. As you see here, Xayah only gains 50 extra HP, which is not that good. Lissandra gains 4 times that in the upcoming buff. So very good for 4, looking very good for 4 and 5 costs. They'll be a lot harder to kill, and these are all the 1-star versions, so I think 2-star versions, they receive even more HP. We're moving on to items now. So because so many of these 4 and 5 costs got health buffs, we have to, or they have to adjust the Giant Slayer HP threshold. So now the Giant Slayer HP threshold before the percentage bonus damage comes into effect has gone from 1600 to 750. Same with Radiant GS. And then we move on to our Titans nerf. So Titans Resolve, basically once you get up to 25 stacks, you used to gain 50 attack damage, 50 ability power, and then resistances. So now, although the attack damage parts of Titans Resolve is untouched, the AP per stack has been cut in half for regular Titans. So instead of 2 AP for every stack, now we're just at 1 AP, so which means that once a Titans Resolved unit is fully stacked at 25 stacks, instead of having 50 ability power, they will be only having 25 AP. So what does this mean for our Titan Resolve users? This means, well, Gnar has been adjusted. Yone will have less of a shield, and his shield was already nerfed in 14.7b. Volibear will just be doing less damage. So these are 2 main Titans holders. I would say the one this affects one of the least is like Kayn, because Kayn doesn't really use AP that well, but there are better items on Kayn anyway. And then Lee Sin will have less of an AP shield. Diana will be just healing less and dealing less, so pretty big Titans change. Definitely those units that utilize the AP side of the Titan scaling has been affected. And then same with Titan's Vow. Now instead of AP per stack from 3 going up to 75, now it's just 2 going down to 50. So those are the 2 main item changes, and then finally we have some augment adjustments. So boiling points are Lux, Porcelain, Arcanist, Lion. Augment has been nerfed. 5 mana per auto attack. Having a built-in Trojan was way too much, so now they have nerfed it down to 3, which is actually pretty substantial. Now it used to be 3 auto attacks to achieve 15 bonus mana. Now you'll have to do 5 auto attacks to achieve 15 bonus mana, so a pretty big nerf. The biggest thing, everything must go, has gone. So no more scouting around a board or scouting around your game and someone is holding 8 Annies, 8 Lilias, and then the other person is holding 8 Nautiluses and everyone's panicking. Everything must go is gone. Augment has been disabled and will no longer be terrorizing your games anymore. Call to Adventure no longer offered on 3.2, it just didn't make sense. Find Vintage has received another nerf. So if you remember in the previous patches, not only had they nerfed the ability to reduce a round on PvE rounds, they also nerfed Aegis, they nerfed ZZ Rot. Now that it's been nerfed again, I'm not sure how viable this augment will be. It will now take 4 rounds to transform. And remember, these are 4 combat rounds because PvE still doesn't work. And also, it cannot be offered anymore with Pandora's items. Other changes, Raid Boss no longer offered on 2-1. Big Grab Bag used to be able to give you 3 of the same components. So if you chose it, there's a chance you low roll and just like, oh, now I have 3 belts or I have 3 cloaks. The way they've changed it is now you can still get 2 of the same components, but you can't get all 3. So you can still get like 2 belts and one glove, 2 cloaks and 1 tier. You can still get 2, but you no longer get 3 of the exact same. And then very final one, they've added some text to Golden Remover. So I will do a quick summary of everything here. That has been the entire patch. The biggest takeaways are the player damage adjusted. Basically, heavy losses are not as bad. If you're getting 3 or more unit of a loss, you will be taking less damage. And then good losses are not as good. If you're just losing by 1 unit, you will take more damage than you would have if you only lost by 1 unit on the current patch. Coup streaking is back. We love to see it. This really incentivizes continuing your streak. If you're winning, keep trying to win. If you're losing, keep trying to lose unless you can win. The 3-cost melee line has been nerfed. Volibear's mana, Yone's attack speed, so overall damage output, and Titans has been nerfed, the AP portion of this, which both of these units use. Also, the 3-cost level 7 shop odds have been nerfed from 40 to 36. So definitely a big hit to the 3-cost melee line. Storyweaver Kale, the actual summon was nerfed. However, the summon units were buffed. Everything Must Go has been removed. And I actually believe we are entering a 4 and a 5-cost meta. Almost every one of these units had received 100 to 200 bonus HP, and a lot of the units got either a mana buff, a damage buff, an attack speed buff, something along these lines. So that has been everything for the patch 14.8 rundown. Thank you so much for coming. And if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you check out the link in the description or the pinned comment to join the Fit Gamer Training Grounds Discord channel. We'll now enter the Q&A session for those who are watching this live.